Hello and welcome to Nick Griffin Beyond the Pale here on Purge TV and also on Substack. Wherever you're joining me from, you're very welcome indeed. Whether you're live on the show now or especially working Brits, no doubt joining us later on. So great to see you all, and do please join in the chat if you're on Purged. Let me see and hear what you're thinking. Right, so yet again, I'm going to be talking a lot today, but not exclusively, about the Iran war. And if you think perhaps this is a bit excessive, then I suspect you haven't been paying attention, because this is going to radically change your life, certainly in the short term, and potentially this is going to change our world. We really are at a crucial moment in history. So it behoves us to talk about it, and that's what I'm going to do tonight, or this evening, or this morning, depending on wherever you are. Well, the first thing to note, of course, is that this war is not going at all well for Donald Trump. Now, whether it's going well for Bibi Netanyahu, who really started it, depends on what his agenda really is. But certainly, ordinary Jews are losing everywhere. They're losing in Israel, which is under far heavier attack than we're being told, and they're losing worldwide as the horror at what the Israelis are doing and the increasing understanding of the power of the Israeli lobby, especially over the United States, is fomenting what is called anti-Semitism all around the world. Well, why is Netanyahu doing this? Because the hardline Zionists, the real hardcore extremists like him, they love anti-Semitism, just as the Sanhedrin, basically a hereditary cross between a mafia and a religious class, have always loved anti-Semitism because it forces Jews, ordinary normal Jews, away from their non-Jewish neighbors and towards them. Anti-Semitism, my friends, is big, big money for the professional organized Jewry, and it's enormous power for the Zionists. So if people think, well, it's crazy what these people are doing because they're encouraging people to hate Jews, that's exactly what they want you to do. It's one of the reasons I so frequently point out that some of the most effective critique of what is being done at present in the name of Jews around the world comes from men like Ron Unz, Gilad Atzmon. Jews, but righteous Jews who speak truth to power, and very brave men for doing so. So it's not going well for Trump, and that I think is indicated by the fact, a lot for Americans today, that Vice President Vance is sort of stepping away from this. He's saying very little. Now, arguably, he should be saying, this is mad. This is not MAGA. MAGA, make Israel great again, is not MAGA, make America great again. This, Mr. President, is not what we were elected for. But he's not going to do that, whether because he's biding his time or because he's scared of the wrath of the Don, I don't know. But in any case, his stepping back is an indication of the growing split within the people governing the United States of America, highlighted absolutely yesterday by the resignation of Joe Kent. Now, Brits may be asking who he ed. Let's have a look at Joe Kent. Here we are. This is him with his young family, taken back before 2019 because his wife there was killed in an attack on American forces in the Lebanon, where American forces should not have been. But if you would think that because of that, Joe Kent would be a fanatical supporter of Israel and supporter of the attack on Iran, absolutely not. Now, he's the National Counterterrorism Center director, or he was until yesterday when he resigned, saying very publicly he's resigning because Iran posed, quote, no imminent threat, unquote, to the US. And he said very openly that the administration, that Trump and co, quote, started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby, unquote. Now, he's now 45. He's a CIA veteran. And his wife, as I said, she was actually a Navy cryptologist, technician, Shannon Kent. She was killed in a bombing in Syria in 2019. And despite that, Joe Kent has said that this war, this insane war, this war on the grounds of fighting terrorism is entirely wrong. It's on the basis of lies. And so he has resigned. Well, what a brave and decent man, and what a tragedy for those kids to lose their mother in somebody else's war. An awful thing. But hold on, just get rid of that now. There we go, I'm back. Let me just dive in the chat here and see who has joined us already. Lady Matriarch is here. Good afternoon to you. Roger Madison from across the pond. Ivan Cooper from up north. And Paul Telford from not quite so far up north. Again, Paul, as Jim said yesterday, many congratulations on your 32nd grandchild. I think my 11 are pretty good, but 32nd, 32, oh, wow. And 3 great-grandchildren. Paul's the same age as me. So that's really quite something. If all the nationalists who whine about us being replaced did, in fact, just a tenth of what Paul's done, we'd be a damn sight better off than we are now. Everybody should be doing, well, at least a third of what Paul's done. I'm just in there. Quite remarkable. Well done, Mr. Telford. Well done to you. Right, let's dive on. Now, there's a lot of people now. People who were gung-ho for the war just a few days ago are now saying, whoa, hold on, I'm not so sure about this. I've got an example for you here. Where's me picture? Headline. Yeah, here we go. This is absolutely typical. This is by a man called Robert Pape. I have no idea who he is, but he's a commentator of sufficient import that I found that it came up basically first when I was searching for this. And this is typical of the headlines that's coming out now, even in the mainstream press, not in the sort of the gutter rags like the Sun and the Daily Mail, but in the serious papers, the ones which actually impact on people who make decisions. Is Iran winning the war? And the answer, he's saying, is remarkably yes. They're being hammered, but that's not the point. They are, in strategic terms, winning this war. And there's good reason for this, because I would say it's nearly impossible for Trump and Netanyahu to win. Now, we're not even sure, absolutely, if Netanyahu is still alive, because he hasn't been seen at the chairing the key meetings that he used to be seen at every day for more than a week. He seems to have vanished, other than one video clip in which he had 6 fingers, I kid you not, and another one where he's shown drinking a cup of coffee to prove he's alive. But there's no date, there's no nothing. So there's something strange. Now, a lot of people, like I say, are saying on account of this that Netanyahu's been killed or badly injured in an Iranian counterstrike, but because the narrative that the controlled media is trying to sell us is that apart from the little inconvenience in the Gulf of Hormuz, at least in military terms, America and Israel are winning this war. Well, if Netanyahu has been killed or badly injured, it would say otherwise. Now, I suspect that he's not dead, not least because all the people behind him will be falling over themselves to replace him. And so the Israeli political elite, which is like a bunch of ferrets in a sack, if no one's attacking them, they'll immediately fight each other. And if Netanyahu is dead, they'd be fighting each other for succession. So I don't think he's dead, but he's very clearly in hiding, which I'm not blaming him for that, because if you've got missiles coming through your very rusty Iron Dome all the time, the more visible you are, the more likely you are to get taken out. And no country's leader has a right, actually, to put himself in harm's way quite openly just to make a point. I'm still here. You know, he's the commander-in-chief. He needs to keep himself alive. I hope they kill him, but until that point, he needs to keep himself alive. So hiding is necessary, but it's only necessary if the Iron Dome isn't working properly. It's only necessary if Israel and the United States are running out of counter missiles. So the fact that Netanyahu's vanished for a week tells us that that is the case. Now, what's the sort of meaning of that? Because surely they can still hammer Iran. They're hammering Iran. They'll carry on doing so. Yes, America and Israel have the capacity to bomb Iran basically back to the Iron Age, even without nukes. But even if they do that, even if they take out all central control, even if they kill millions of Iranians, even if they flatten Tehran, there will still be weapons in the hands of very motivated, very brave and very angry men with which they can hit ships, with which they can hit the Gulf states and not defeat America, not defeat Israel, but devastate the global economy and give Donald Trump the choice of either bringing ships in so close that they will become targets and they will be hit and large numbers of Americans will be killed in someone else's war that their people voted against. So that's a possibility. Or he must declare victory and leave, in which case the Iranians, battered though they will be, will say, well, we are still here, and everybody will know that in real terms they have won. And that's where they are now. Even if they nuke Tehran, which I think is where the Israelis want to go, the Zionist crackpots will say, well, if we at least nuke it, we'll put it back so far it will never be a threat to us, and we'll make everyone frightened of us, blah, blah, blah. Even if they nuke it, they will not stop the asymmetric warfare, aka terrorism, which will be the result and will go on everywhere for years and will especially destabilize and eventually destroy all the USA statelets, puppet statelets in the Gulf, who are enormously powerful because of their wealth in the whole of the international economy. More of that in a bit. But one more point on this before we move on, that whatever they do to Iran, it won't stop the Iranians, because the Iranians are Shia Muslims. They're the 10% Shia. And the Shia have got a thing about martyrdom. They've been martyrs for 1700 years. They thrive on martyrdom. Not just in the way that traditional Christians do, but in the way that traditional Calvinist Christians do. Now, all the blood of martyrs is the seed of the church. That's always been the case in Christian ideas and Christian reality. But more than anybody, the Calvinists, the extreme Protestants, thrive on persecution. If they're not being persecuted, they're not really happy, because persecution is a sign that the enemies of God are really getting at them because they're doing a good job for God. They want to be persecuted, and the Shia are exactly the same. So there is no defeating those people other than killing them all. And that, fortunately, is an impossibility. It's such a vast place. Even if they nuke all their main cities, there'll still be millions of surviving Iranians, and all the remaining scraps of propaganda moral high ground that the Zionist project has from what they said about the Second World War, it will all be gone. But there's more to it than that. So now you might say, well, it's a long way away. Does it really matter to me? I hate them all or whatever. Well, it is going to matter to you. You already know about what's happened to your fuel prices, and that's going to get a lot worse. And that's feeding in. Presently, it's a little bit of an inconvenience. It's going to feed into far higher prices. It's going to feed into far worse economic problems in a Western economy, which was on the verge anyway of being utterly upended by AI and robotization, the destruction of ordinary people's jobs. And on top of that, now you've got this, what starts as an energy crisis and will become a financial crisis. But every day, something's cropping up. I talked the other day or the other week about the fact that a desperate shortage of urea, that's artificial fertilizer, which 40% of the world's supply is made in the Gulf, and none's being made and none's being exported, that's going to feed into famine. It'll take months and months, even several years. It'll be a rolling famine, which, among other things, causes the West, and your street in particular, to be increasingly flooded with people fleeing the third world. So refugees. But every day is bringing something more about this. So I was vaguely aware over the last couple of weeks that desalination plants are very important. But then I saw this headline as I was preparing this show for you. Where have we got it? Saudi chaos. This is in the Telegraph today. Saudi Arabia could be 7 days away from chaos if Iran's water war hits home. Tehran's ability to strike desalination plants, vital to water supply in the region, poses an existential threat to 6 Arab states. Well, wouldn't it be wicked if they do that? Well, no, it wouldn't be wicked if they do that, not least because one of their desalination plants, an Iranian one, has already been hit. Doesn't really matter to them. Only 2% of their water comes from desalination, because Iran is a country of vast mountains and huge rivers and lakes and so on. But the Gulf states, they're millions upon millions upon millions of people rely almost exclusively on desalination plants. There's one plant in Saudi Arabia alone produces 40% of the water. And Iran can take it out like that. And if they do, well, if they only take out one, you can lose 40% of your water. It can be very inconvenient. It'll affect your industry and so on. It will affect your data centers big time, but it won't crush you completely. But take out a few more, and that is what the Gulf states are looking at. And these are not just clients of the United States of America and allies of Israel. These are the people whose money fuels the American economy. And in particular, it's key to what has fueled the AI boom bubble, which for months now, the financial experts have been saying, not sure about this, because it looks like a boom, but is it a bubble? And if it goes bust, all of America's economic gains of the last 4 years have gone overnight, boom, because all of America's growth is accounted for by that AI boom. Take it out and it's gone, and America's in recession. Take it out across the world and the world is in depression. That is what we are headed for right now. And like I say, every day something else crops up, which shows us that this is even worse than people have thought to start with. It really is. It's a threat. But basically, the Western world's economy in particular was already a financial house of cards, and all the chaos that's coming our way is liable to bring it down. And then there's even worse, a little bit further down the line, because the Chinese right now have got far more exercises in and near the Gulf that separates China from offshore Taiwan, and the Chinese want it back. But quite right too. Taiwan is a part of China. It was only separated at the end of the Chinese Civil War at the end of the 1940s, when the Kuomintang, who were the nationalist Chinese, who had dominated the whole of China, they were the ones who did the heavy lifting, taking it off the Japanese as the Second World War ground to a halt. But also the communists were involved in that, and they had a civil war after the Second World War ended, and the communists won. And the Kuomintang, the Chinese nationalists, ended up fleeing to Taiwan, where they established a secondary and alternative Chinese government, and they've been there ever since. And they've made Taiwan the center of the world semiconductor industry. And the whole world, but particularly the Western world, and especially America, cannot do anything. They certainly can't fight a war without semiconductors from Taiwan. And the Chinese could blockade it tomorrow, and they could take it in 2 weeks' time if they want to, once they are really quite confident that the Americans simply haven't got any defensive missiles left to spare. They can't fight on another front. But there's another really important factor, that Kuomintang are still really the most important political party on Taiwan, which, unlike communist China, is a democracy, which means basically that people, the media who decide who's elected, usually pick pro-American liberals to run the show. It's a puppet government for the United States deep state and military industrial complex. But the Kuomintang used to be fanatically against communist China, and therefore wanting to maintain the independence of Taiwan. They are changing very, very rapidly. And although the liberals in positions of power in Taiwan are still absolutely in favor of independence and being the puppets of America, the Kuomintang are shifting. They're cozying up to the Chinese, because the Chinese are no longer really run by, it's the Communist Party, but it's a national Communist Party. It's there for the interests of China. There are question marks about where does it intersect with the World Economic Forum and so on, and to what extent is it independent. But it's clearly independent far, far more than any Western nation. And it's got the power to wash its hands of any links, basically, with the West, if it wants to. Which it doesn't want to, because it wants to sell us things and make money. But if it wants to, if it's forced to, it can simply cut off the West and go its own way. And the nationalists in Taiwan are increasingly close to the national communists in Beijing. And the ambitious pragmatists are going to be looking at this and thinking, especially if Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states are smashed up by not even having any water, let alone any other problems, the ambitious pragmatists in Taiwan are going to think, you know what? We're better off, instead of being hooked up to an America which cannot possibly defend us militarily, because it can't, If the American fleet might survive off the coast of Iran, it would not survive in a war off the coast of China. So America cannot defend Taiwan. And when the ambitious pragmatists realized that, you could have not just the Chinese communists wanting to take Taiwan, but the Taiwanese nationalists wanting to go in with China, and the ambitious pragmatists wanting to do the same thing. And against them will only be the liberals and the homosexuals. And the liberals and the homosexuals cannot beat Chinese communists and the nationalists and the ambitious pragmatists. So we're very, very close to the Chinese taking back Taiwan, and it's game over for the American economy and the American military. Now, Trump, for all his stupidity, has seen this coming to a degree and has tried over the last couple of years to shift semiconductor chip production in a huge scale, especially the most advanced ones, into the USA. But he hasn't yet done it. And they and we rely on Taiwan for those vital, high quality chips. So take those out and your life is going to change. Not just so you won't be able to afford the next expensive thing that has expensive chips in it, but because the economic chaos and financial chaos is going to cascade down and hit me and you and everybody that you know. That's where we are. Now, I've got one thing I want to say to you, that this, I hope, is all very interesting. It certainly needs talking about. But speaking out about things like this, and especially speaking out against Zionist power, and for that matter, against the mass immigration madness, which has been forced on our people for far too long. And, you know, I've always spoken out about that. Speaking out about these things comes at a price. Right now, I'm being dragged through the courts by the UK's main Zionist attack dog, the badly misnamed Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. They're trying to put me in prison for something like 2 years. My once formidable effective reach on X has both been hacked and shadow banned to near oblivion. Likewise on Facebook. I'm deplatformed left, right and centre. But I'm still here, still speaking and still fighting, still organising. I'm making a very real effort to give not just cutting edge analysis of the big problems, but also to offer solutions, practical proposals for things that individual patriots and organised groups of nationalists can do to help our people endure and survive this coming multifaceted storm. I do it because I love our people and our nations and our wonderful culture and our Christian heritage and faith. But I can't do it alone. I need help. And I appreciate your help. So if you appreciate what I've done in the past and what I'm doing now and my constructive plans for the future, please come and join me on the app Substack and become a paid subscriber. It's only £5 a month or $8 a month to you, but it's a real boost to me and to my capability to make a real difference and to help shape a better future for our people. Thank you very much for your faith and your support. Right, let's dive on back into this, shall we? Let me just have a quick look in the chat here and see what else have we got. Kit Bear, hello, good to see you now. And now Kit knows about computers, and Kit right away says hence the RAM shortage right now. Yes, indeed. Mitch Cameron says, you'll shelter me here in deep East Texas, Mitch. I'm sure you would, but unfortunately, I am banned from traveling to the United States of America. Mike McGuffin, God bless you too, sir. Yes, indeed. And Gab is a good platform. I've tried Gab, Ivan, and I found there was really no traction on it at all. It was beginning to grow. I think Andrew Torbett is a great man doing really good work. And Gab was beginning to take off when X was absolutely nailed to the floor for everybody, not just the hardline real people like us. And Truth Social was frankly very, very clunky. But once Elon Musk liberated X for all the counter jihad, for all the moron right wing, I think that Gab has been rather slower. And certainly when I tried it last, it really wasn't worth the effort, unfortunately. I hope that will change. Yeah, Roger Madison, you're probably right, actually. I think that Trump and co probably will take Cuba back. That's probably in their capability. But winning Cuba and losing the Middle East, that is not a good deal. That was really something deeply, deeply stupid. As a matter of fact, although I'm against the communist regime that's in China, I'm also thoroughly against the United States of America interfering. And if the United States hadn't imposed a brutal set of international sanctions on Cuba for decades, Cuba, under its nominally communist government, would already have developed massively and have huge tourism, and would probably have been something like Yugoslavia was before it was torn apart by the American deep state interfering yet again in someone else's bloody country. So I've got sympathy for the Cubans under communist oppression, but most of their hardship is because of the oppression of the Yankee deep state. And if Americans are horrified by me saying that, remember this: the very first victims of the Yankee deep state and Yankee imperialist aggression were the southern states in the war between the states. So you're the victims of these people as well as everybody else. So don't have false sympathy with your oppressors. The same is very, very true for the people of Britain and our oppressors. Ivan, I'll probably try that. Try the Brexit group on Gab. Perhaps I just haven't used it actually properly enough. Ken Wood, hello again. Really want some Havanas. Yeah, I guess so. They do smell nice. I've never smoked. But I do think that proper cigars do smell really rather damn good. But that's another story. Right then, so what have we got? Yes, rationing. I was talking about the chaos that's coming your way. The government of Britain. Probably this isn't the case in the USA, because the USA is basically self-sufficient in oil and all sorts of other things. But the government of Britain and governments all over Western Europe are preparing right now for rationing. This isn't something which is just talked about in the wildest spheres of the internet. Here you have the Daily Mail, which, if it's printing something, may be true or may not. But here they're saying fuel rationing is possible, admits the government, as Trump condemns Starmer and Europe for snubbing his pleas for help to reopen the Hormuz Strait. Well, the Hormuz Strait cannot be reopened by military means anyway. So actually, Starmer's quite right, and the rest of Europe is quite right to stay out of this mess. Why would Britain send basically its couple of remaining warships to be sunk in somebody else's war? Or even if they weren't sunk, to help someone else win a thoroughly unjust, thoroughly wicked war. It's not our fight, and it's a bad fight in any case. But here you have the government actually admitting, and this was Treasury Minister Dan Tomlinson, has said the government is monitoring the situation carefully because global supplies are under huge pressure, and saying that the possibility of fuel rationing in Britain cannot be ruled out. That is how bad this is getting. And we're not talking about something if this goes on for months. You're talking about this happening potentially in a very few weeks. This is going to affect you, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, you can read all this as Donald Trump being conned by Netanyahu, as Joe Kent has done, for example, as Tucker Carlson has done, quite right too. You can read it as just that. Or you can read it a different way, that the global elite, primarily headed by the World Economic Forum, which isn't some bunch of strange cranks. It's an operation massively funded by the Rockefellers and the global fake banking system for decades, to push the idea that there's too many people in the world and we have too high a carbon footprint and it must be reduced. And they say in particular, there's no point the super rich reducing their, our carbon footprint when they're talking about it, because there's so few of them it wouldn't make a difference. And there's no point the people of the third world reducing their carbon footprint because it's already so low that that wouldn't make a difference. The people whose carbon footprints must be reduced massively to the level of third world peasants, they've been quite open about this for years, is us, the middle class of the world, basically the industrial world. That's thee and me. If I can find quickly the book, yeah, here we go, in Deus Vult, the Great Reset Resistance. Where is the graph in here? I should have got it beforehand, of course, and found it for you. But there's a graph in here. And interestingly, this graph I found when this book was being put together. It was very widely available on the internet, and it disappeared. It's it's basically, it was impossible to find last time I looked. Hence, I'm looking for it now in this book. Where's it gone? Hold on. And it shows, so it's not a graph, it's an onion, effectively. and the outer edges of the onion show where we are. It shows overproduction, supposedly. Ah, there we go. Right. So I will find it for you. I found it here. Now, you probably won't be able to see this, but I will hold it up so you know. This is the book, still available from the Templars on the Templar store, and really worth getting. And this graph here, I'll just show it to you, this image rather. And what it's got, it's the World Economic Forum's proposal to eliminate the middle classes in the West. And on the outer edge, sorry, on the inner, there's poverty. That's where they say lots of people are in the third world. Out of that, it goes to the green, and that's why we're sustainable. But this dark ring here, nearer the edge, is the environmental ceiling. You can't, below that is sustainable lifestyles. That's the ceiling. And in this orange section, the orange section here, that is overconsumption, and it's environmentally unsustainable. Say the people funded by the Rockefeller Foundation in the end, and at war with the whole of the industrial world and every person in our part of the world. And they were saying back years ago that they're forcibly going to shrink our carbon footprint. And the whole point about that book was it was the Great Reset Resistance. The whole COVID scam was absolutely, positively, definitely, more than anything else, an experiment in forcibly reducing our access to travel, to choice, to all sorts of foods and so on, just to what we regard as a normal life. It was designed as an experiment to push us down, to suppress our carbon footprint. Now, just because the COVID thing came to its end, and they probably daren't do that again, don't think that they've dropped their idea of crushing our carbon footprint. Of course they haven't. That's what the net zero thing is all about. And many people are understanding that in Britain, Ed Miliband and so on, net zero is a deliberate. It's not something which is going to destroy the economy by accident. It's by design to wreck the economy, to wreck your life and the life of your children and all the rest of it forever. But that's a bit dangerous for governments to do because it's clearly self-inflicted. And especially in an era where populists give the electors an impression of choice, it's a dangerous thing to do. So it's better if our carbon footprint is suppressed by things which the people in power in each country can say, well, sorry, Gov, it's nothing to do with us. It's external forces. What do you expect us to do about it? You know, suck it up and put up with it. Let's have a bit of the old blitz spirit. Hey, we're all in this together and all that nonsense. So the war in Ukraine, and especially the attack on the Nord Stream gas and the sanctions, which are an effort to force the industries of Europe and Britain to commit suicide by Russia, that is an attack on us and our carbon footprint, but it's a disguised attack. And I think that what's going on now is as well, because if this blockade of the Straits of Hormuz carries on for very much longer, and all the signs are that it's going to, and even if Trump does declare victory and leave, the Iranians are going to say, they're already saying, until we are compensated for this unjust war, until the sanctions are lifted, we are going to keep on blocking the Straits of Hormuz and hitting your puppet states in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, etc., etc. It's going to carry on, which means that it's for the globalists a wonderful, plausibly deniable destruction of our industrial modern way of life. This thing isn't just an unjust war, it's a disguised attack on you and your living standards, on all our freedoms. That is what is going on here. Now, on the subject of freedom, I've got something fresh to show you in a second, and this is really quite shocking. At least it should shock you. Let's just dive back into the chat here a moment. Thank you, Roger Madison, pointing out to me that in this excellent book, copy is still available, not from me, from the Templars, it was page 115. Thank you very much. Ken Wood, that's why I'm a prepper. Quite right too. Yeah, Kit Bear, net zero is absolutely impossible to achieve unless you get rid of all life. You may well be right, but certainly they want to get rid of an awful lot of us. The more they get robotization and AI, they think, well, what use are all these people? They're really, Yuval Harari and so on, they're really quite clear about this. So yeah, it's quite a remarkable time to be alive. But as I said, I want to talk to you about something particularly frightening on the question of freedom. Where are we here? Oh, I lost that bit. Oh, hang on. Okay, it's internment. Where have I got the intern clip? Did I not upload it? What a fool. I didn't upload that one. Sorry about that. There's various headlines. Ah, that's it. That's the one. Yes. I was looking for a headline. It's not. Here we have Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Every proper, genuine nationalist, even those of us who had suspicions about Carlson to start with where he stands now, you have to say that man is a very brave and a very good and a very well-informed man indeed. Candace Owens, sometimes you think she's as mad as a box of frogs. But the whole point about American freedom is she's got to be entitled to be as mad as a box of frogs, and Americans have got to be entitled to listen to her and to make up your own minds. That's the point of having something like genuine freedom of expression, to which Americans are rightly strongly attached. But anyway, there's a really worrying new phase in the ongoing attack on freedom in the USA, which will mean here as well, because what happens in the States tends to come here. There's a very influential journalist who's now demanding internment without trial for Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and others. Internment without trial for American citizens who dare to state that Israel first isn't what millions of voters meant when they demand that the Washington elite, in particular, and Donald Trump as well, should put America first. And so this is Israeli historian and journalist Yair Kleinbaum, who wrote this. It's time to put Fuentes, Owens, Carlson, and Ugar, who's from the Young Turks, by the way, inside a World War II style internment camp. We have reached a point where there is no choice but to take decisive action and arrest them. And Kleinbaum published this demand in JFeed, which is an English language news platform, which describes itself as, quote, proudly unfiltered, proudly Jewish, and proudly committed to conservative values, unquote, but not freedom for others, with the stated mission of becoming, this is the ambition of JFeed, it intends to become the leading English language news source for global Jewry, unquote. Anyone else uses the word Jewry and they tend to come and get you. But here we have the Israeli journalist Yair Kleinbaum happily using it and saying we're going to become the leaders for opinion forming in this very, very powerful lobby. And it's time to put Fuentes, Owens, Carlson, and Ugar inside a World War II style internment camp. I mean, truly, truly shocking stuff. Or at least it should be if you're an American, not just an American nationalist, but any sort of American patriot should be utterly horrified to hear that. But that's where they're trying to go. This is really, really serious stuff. I tell you that. Now, Carlson, by the way, has particularly angered these people because he recently did an entire show highlighting for American idiots, the Christian Zionists, the plight of Palestinian Christians under Zionist oppression, violence, and expropriation. Not just the ones who've been murdered and still being starved in Gaza, but the ones who are having their houses and churches taken off them and replaced by ultra-Zionist settlers in the West Bank. And Carlson, as an American Christian, has turned up, has said, this is what's going on. This should not be happening in our name. And the remarkable thing, actually, is the way in which everything that's going on is affecting not only people like Carlson, but even people who only 3 weeks ago were absolutely committed to an Israeli and American attack on Iran and who swallowed all the propaganda lies about Iran being an imminent threat, etc., and the source of global Islamic terrorism, when the Iranians did more to fight the Sunni Islamic terrorism, which people like Obama helped to promote, than any other people on the planet other than the old Syrian government and the Russians. So they're the enemies, the fighting opponents of Muslim terrorism, not the people who promoted it. But anyway, all sorts of Americans who had no idea of that and were very happy to see Iran flattened, they are beginning to change their minds. And there's one particularly good example for you, is this man, Rod Dreher. Now, Rod is an American Christian conservative, and he's written some really good stuff. Behind him in that picture is Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Dreher wrote a really good book based on a phrase of Solzhenitsyn's, "Live not by lies," about how Christians and patriots have to stand up and do the proper thing against the woke madness. And he also wrote The Benedict Option, which is how basically, look, the whole West is really going to hell in a handcart, and we have to create in families and communities, we have to create things like the monasteries of the Dark Ages, beacons, the Benedict Option, do like St. Benedict did. We have to create beacons where our way of life and our faith and the knowledge of our civilization can carry on despite everything around us basically falling apart. And so that's where Rod Dreher comes from. And he, just in the last few days, has shifted his position enormously. Now, he's still radically pro-Israel, but he's now saying this. He said specifically about this threat, and pointing out that it's not just Kleinbaum who's behind it, there's others as well. Rod Dreher said this just the other day: "Don't worry, hawkish radio talker Mark Levin says that if you oppose this war and think Trump made a mistake, then you're a traitor to the country for undermining the president in wartime. To be sure, I completely agree with Levin's condemnation in the clip of the anti-Semites in America." That's Rod Dreher saying that, not me. "But man, he's not doing American Jews any favor by tying them to the fate of this unpopular and ill-advised war. In the event of an American loss, then the woke left and the woke right are going to go full force with scapegoating Jews, I fear." But notice how he's now saying that Trump and America and Israel aren't winning this war. It's going wrong. This is one of the most fervent supporters of intervention, basically admitting that he got it wrong and in 3 weeks it's all gone wrong. Dreher goes on to say this: "Obviously, Iran will not be able to defeat the US in the same sense that the Allies defeated Imperial Germany. But they don't have to in order to deliver a sharp shock to the American people. All they have to do is to survive in a way that resets the global order to knock the US off its pedestal. If we reach the end of hostilities with the regime still in place and still holding its supply of enriched uranium, I can't see how the US can count that a victory, no matter how badly we will have degraded Iran's conventional forces. If the American people, already economically stressed, find themselves having to pay $5 a gallon or more for gas and higher prices across the board, who could blame them for asking why this America First president launched a war that was not in the interests of his own people, especially given that the country is deeply polarized and the war was already widely unpopular on its first day." Now, this is astounding stuff. It really is. And Dreher finished this, again, it's a Substack piece, actually. Do come and get involved on the app. There's fantastic writings there. He finished this piece basically without saying so, admitting that he was wrong, that this war that he favored at the start is a disaster. He finished it by posting this from somewhere else: "If Iran wins," and he's just said Iran is winning, and it's difficult to see how they're not going to win. "If Iran wins, it's the end of 5 eras. It's not just Trump losing a war and the end of his presidency. It's the end of 5 eras. It's the end of the unipolar era of having just one power in the world, which we've been with since 1991, when the old Soviet Union fell. It's the end of the petrodollar era, which we've been with since 1974. It's the end of the post-war era, which we've been in since 1945. It's also the end of the Union era, this especially for Americans. It's the end of the period that started in 1776. And Rod Dreher believes, because that's why he's reposted this, it's the end of the entire Western era, which has been around since 1492. Because a rapid crash in the dollar's power, coupled with military defeat, could break apart the American Union. And it certainly marks the end of when the West dominated the world. And that's not something being said by hardcore extremists like me. That's being reposted by one of the biggest friends of Israel, that exists on the American conservative right. Really is quite remarkable stuff. Right, time is pressing on. I'll just show you, just in case you're not aware of where we're talking about. Here we go. There's the Straits of Hormuz at the southern side of Iran, and 40% of the world's oil, 20% of the world's oil has to go through that gap. 40% of the world's fertilizer has to go through that gap. Coming the other way, all the food that's used by the satellite states in the Persian Gulf has to come through that gap. And it can be closed by a couple of raggedy-ass tribesmen with RPGs if needs be. That is just how serious this mess is, and it's why it's going to affect your life, and why things like this, which was one of the oil tankers, the Iranians haven't even had to hit, let alone sink many of these things to close the straits completely. It's been said they've mined the straits. No, they haven't, because they're letting the tankers of their allies, such as the Chinese, still pass through. So very clearly, if the straits were mined, which they're not yet, but they could be, then no one would be going through the Straits of Hormuz. Right now, the only people not going through the Straits of Hormuz are the freighters of countries allied to the United States of America. And that's why it's getting really serious, which is why really hard and strange times are coming our way. Because, as I said before, you're facing an energy shock, which becomes a financial shock to a global economy which is already staggering under the burden of a totally unrepayable and unsustainable debt. That's where we are right now. So I want to now come on to finish onto something deeply, deeply practical, because this shouldn't frighten or alarm you. Even the prospect of the collapse of the whole financial system that underpins our world. Why should that alarm us as nationalists? Because our nations and our people's very existence as a safe ethnic bloc has been driven to the point of destruction by this global capitalism. Why should it bother us if it goes down in a handcart, if they lose? It doesn't. Why should it bother Christians if this appalling, disgusting, twinned with Sodom and Gomorrah system? And in fact, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah would have been so horrified by the modern West, they wouldn't have wanted to be twinned with us. Why should we bother? Why should we bother if a system which has murdered hundreds of millions of babies through abortion crashes and burns and is replaced by some kind of medieval subsistence economy where faith and decency and identity return? Doesn't bother me. It's a wonderful thing. The collapse of the old order is pregnant with the potential for revolution for a new order. And that's where we are. But we have to get there. And how do we get there? Well, I tell you, not through any parliamentary solution. There is no parliamentary solution. You talk about Rupert Lowe or J.D. Vance in due course as much as you like. You can worry if Gavin Newsom's going to be the next president of the United States, odds on at present, or if Tucker Carlson will become. It doesn't matter. None of them. For two reasons. Firstly, the demographic bust, which is coming our way and inevitably becomes a total financial bust, is so serious that no one can put this right in terms of keeping the existing system together. We have to move on to something new, which may be poorer in material terms. It may be smaller in sort of geographic terms. It'll be a damn sight richer and a better place. Once we've got through the pain, it will one day be a better, more decent, more traditional place. But it's not just the demographic bust and the impossibility of dealing with that, which means there's no parliamentary solution. It's the very basis of parliamentary democracy, which is to give the masses an illusion of choice. Parliamentary democracy for many decades now has been a fig leaf for the rule of the plutocrats, the kleptomaniacs, and the international banksters. It's nothing more than that. You give the masses an illusion of choice between Tweedledum and Tweedledee, blue, red, or even something purple. And while the masses have that illusion of choice, you have complete control over their minds and their hearts, and you've got them by the bits as well. That's where we are. So there is no political solution to any of this. The solution to this is to work right now, strengthening and protecting our own families. Well, very first of all, our own hearts, us, then our families and our communities, especially our communities, because no man survives and goes forward in our world alone. You must be part of a family, and very, very few families can survive and will survive the sort of horrors that are coming if they're not in strong communities. So building and strengthening communities, and I'm not talking about sort of artificial communes where everyone with a certain view goes and lives together and within 6 months hate each other. Now I'm talking about ordinary, real communities, especially of ordinary working people, which is where semblance of community still survives right the way across even our present poisoned society. And I'm going to show you a couple of pictures right towards the end of this of things that I've been involved with, and Jim Dowson and the Templars as well recently. I was up in Haywood with Jim in Lancashire a couple of weeks ago with the Haywood Guardians, who are a group of young men, and some of them not quite so young, but still very fit and sturdy, who've got together to create a community patrol of the sort that I've been writing about on Substack. These are the sort of things that real nationalists can do in the real world. And here's a shot of some of them out on the streets, with the high street of Haywood, just looking out for, not there to cause any trouble, not there to fight anyone, simply there to observe, to take pictures, to take notes, and thereby to deter any sorts of bad behavior, whether it's low-level vandalism, grooming gangs, or whatever. There's another picture of them there. That's a group of them obviously taken from behind. Some of these fellas have got responsible jobs and such like. They don't want to be seen on camera, but they are prepared to go out patrolling their own streets. Really, really good. And here is their leader, Jamie, a very good chap. And he's a bare-knuckle boxer, actually, or used to be. He's a tough man from tough streets. And he's there with a load of kit that we've taken up to him, which is stab-proof vests. What else there? Some really powerful, big, chunky torches, some thoroughly expensive but very good quality GoPros, chest-mounted GoPros, and down on the right-hand side, these things. Serious collection of decent walkie-talkies. I was very impressed to see this automatic stand. When we were dealing with these back in the old days of British National Party community protection experiments, you had each radio came with its own charger and so on. It was a cat's cradle of chaos. And now, isn't that a neat, slick thing? And that was bought for them by the donations of patriots all over the world, actually, through an appeal which the Templars ran. And, well, what a wonderful thing. Really, really good to see. And interestingly, I was speaking to Jamie earlier on today, and I was saying, how's it going with the patrols? And he said, well, just at present, we paused them. So I said, oh, why? What? He said, well, it's Operation Avro. And I said, what on earth is Operation Avro? He said, it's a police operation, and they swamped the town of Haywood with police. There's foot patrols, unheard of, basically, but mainly cars going round and round and round. They swamped the place. So I looked it up, and Operation Avro, it's not specific to Haywood. It's operated by Lancashire Police, and it's every month. They basically put a swamping police force into a different town. Now, there's dozens, scores of towns and suburbs, hundreds, in fact, if you count the suburbs, in Lancashire, and they've not been to Haywood before. Why have they picked this month to flood Haywood with so many police that antisocial behaviour, grooming perverts, and all the rest of it, nonsense, become an impossibility? Why? Because the month before, Jamie and the chaps were out there with their patrols. Just a couple of weeks ago, they actually intervened with and took out of circulation a paedophile, white paedophile trash, I believe. I don't care what colour or religion a paedophile is. They should all have their bollocks cut off, or they should be executed. I don't care. Whatever the locals want to do with them after a due proper trial. But yeah, we're not going to get that. But still, all paedophiles are the scum of the earth, regardless of what they are. And the people who go on and on, oh, look at these Muslim nonsense. But the minute a white person does it, they don't actually bother. They're not interested. That's absolutely disgusting. All of them must be condemned. All of them. And opposed. And because the community guardians in Haywood actually caught and stopped one, and because of these patrols, all of a sudden the police turn up. And what they're trying to do is to show the people of Haywood that, don't worry, you don't need to be out on the streets yourselves. You don't need to protect your own community because we'll do it. Leave it to the experts. Except, of course, at the end of the month, the experts will go. Hayward will see one police car every couple of hours, and the criminality of all sorts will creep back. Only it won't, because the local chaps will be out there, yet again, protecting and reassuring their own community. And that has to be the way forward. It's a really great thing to see. Right, time is up. I'm going to... now, according to the Temple report, he was a Pakistani. Okay, all right, well, I'm glad that they've handed him over to the authorities, because although it should be a public execution, as Ken Wood says, actually, in real terms, it's not for the public to take the law into their own hands in that way, because it's a hideous, slippery slope. We have to try to get the authorities to do what is right. And to be fair on the grooming gangs, having done nothing, having deliberately turned a blind eye for 30 or 40 years, finally, they do get involved and do take some of these gangs out, and some of them are serving very long prison sentences. That is because they were terrified of what the British people in general and the English in particular would do unless they finally got a grip. And it's because of people like Paul Telford and all the other BNP veterans who are still about. Because of what you did, my friend. It's because of what we did to break this story that finally something is being done, and we don't have to take the law into our own hands, because sometimes, even now, the police will do it. Or as Paul Telford points out, there are plenty of pedos in the government system and the BBC. Don't forget the BBC. Right, that is it for today. I am going to leave you, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I'm leaving you with what is a favourite song of mine by one of my favourite bands. This is Show of Hands, who are sort of leftist but English nationalists. Then they were around for some years. They're defunct now, but you can find them all over YouTube and so on. Some really great tracks, both traditional English folk tracks and their own versions or their own songs. This is one of them. It's a song called Roots. I'm going to leave you with that, and with a reminder, please to join me here next Wednesday, same time, same place, to be back on Purge TV Thursday, tomorrow at 4 p.m. To see Jim Dowson on the Templar Report, and to join him when he's wearing his clerical robes and so on, as the genuine pastor that he is, on the very, very fine Magdalen Chapel Sunday sermon. Obviously enough, on Sunday. So until you, God willing, join me here next week, same time, same place, I remind you that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. So get out there and do something good. Deus Vult.
Now it's been 25 years or more, I've roamed this land from shore to shore, from Tyne to Tamar, 7 to 10s, from Moor to Vale, from Peak to Fen, played in cafes and pubs and bars, I've stood in the street with my old guitar, but I'd be richer than all the rest if I had a pound for each request. But Julian Banjo's American Pie, it's enough to make you cry. Rule Britannia or swing low, are they the only songs we English know? Seed, bud, flower, fruit, they're never gonna grow without their roots. Branch, stem, shoots, they need roots. After the speeches, when the cake's been cut, the disco's over and the bar is shut. At christening, birthday, wedding or wake, what can we sing until the morning breaks? When the Indian, Asians, Afro Celts, it's in their blood below the belt. They're playing and dancing all night long, so what have they got right that we've got wrong? Seed, bud, flower, fruit, never gonna grow without their roots. Branch, stem, shell, we need roots and all the way, boys, let them go out in the wind and the rain and snow. We've lost more than we'll ever know on the rocky shores of England. All the way, boys, let them go out in the wind and the three folk singers in a pub near Wells. Well, I've got a vision of urban sprawl. It's pubs where no one ever sings at all, and everyone stares at a great big screen. Overpaid soccer stars, prancing teams, Australian soap, American rap, history, English, baseball,